Hello, and welcome back to Civic Concord, a podcast where we share information, highlight important topics, and hear directly from people involved in town government. This is a Minuteman Media Network production. Today, I'm joined by members of the Concord Public Works Department to talk about a new stormwater utility, what it means for residents, how it works, and how it supports our broader climate and resilience goals. We have Alan Cathcart, Director of Concord Public Works. Say hello.
Hello, Megan. Good to see you.
And Samiksha Poudel, Senior Town Engineer.
Hi, I'm Samiksha Poudel.
Welcome. Thank you so much. So lately, one of the things I've been working on with members of the community is updating our climate action plan. We have a climate action plan from 2020, and a lot of the goals have been completed. And we've been looking at working with a new vendor to update the plan. But the work that the Climate Action Committee and others have been doing over the last year is trying to understand, what got accomplished, what didn't, and why. And one of the big success stories from that plan is the stormwater utility. And this is, while the utility is new, the concept is not. And so we have Sammy and Alan here today to talk a little bit about the history and how it came to be. Alan, do you want to share a little bit about the background?
Sure. I think people in Concord certainly, almost more than most communities appreciate, the natural environment. And Concord, people realize, is sort of in the center of the Sudbury, Assabet rivers, the confluence of the Concord River. And the watersheds and water bodies are just important assets to the community. We are blessed with the fact that, historically these systems have been well protected. We're not in a reactionary mode, like you may hear other watersheds and, the Charles River and, very urban environments have, been in a situation where they've been, those systems have been compromised. But as we develop and urbanization occurs, we do alter the natural course of water resources. And what happens is, if they're not managed properly, the stormwater system is intended to prevent flooding as well as to, protect and improve, quality. And when you have urbanization, you have buildings and structures and pavement. You now modify that, and stormwater systems really do need to be managed so they both reduce and mitigate flood impacts, but also reduce and mitigate water quality impacts as well. Over the last, since the Clean Water Act, there's been a lot of attention on drinking water quality, a lot of attention on wastewater management. The stormwater hasn't been given the same attention historically, almost the orphan in the water resource management arena. About 20 years ago, we started paying more attention to this. There were regulations that were developed, the MS4 regulations, which are federal, which start providing awareness of identifying what the assets are, what you need to do to identify how they're working and the condition of them, and well as trying to look at how to optimize and, in essence, maintain, manage, and potentially replace or improve or upgrade. And so that's where Concord, like many communities across the nation, are dealing with this relatively new fiscal challenge, which has historically been sort of out of sight, out of mind.
So we have a new stormwater utility, and for folks tuning in here, that might sound a little technical, and we're talking about the importance of managing our stormwater infrastructure. Can one of you explain a little bit about what this utility is and why the town decided to create it?
Yeah, I'll talk with the funding and really financial stability. Stormwater has not had a dedicated source of funds, much like the drinking water or wastewater systems. So in essence, anytime there's been needs or work done on those stormwater systems, they come out of the general taxes. And as designed with the MS4 program, we are seeing more and more needs for investment in that infrastructure, and it's becoming increasingly more and more expensive. And without a dedicated source of funds, we are in essence trying to compete with other tax needs, and the intent of an enterprise is where not all properties that actually have an impact on stormwater pay taxes. This is a way to make it more equitable. So all properties with what we call impervious cover, that's areas that do not get a natural recharge, upset by rooftops, parking lots, driveways, pools, that sort of thing, will pay their fair share. So it's established to create a dedicated revenue stream, stable and predictable funding, so you can develop budgets from year to year to develop programs for operations and maintenance, as well as have access for capital improvements if we need to borrow, and potentially that would come out of that enterprise and paid back over time through the enterprise, not the tax base. So it's really about equity and fairness when it comes to covering these costs.
And I think we probably will talk about it a little bit more, but I think it might be worth specifying a little bit about what the MS4 program is and how does that relate, and what should residents know about MS4?
MS4 is the federal permit that we have to comply to, and basically is with respect to the stormwater. When we say MS4, we mean Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It looks over the general overview of the stormwater system. It comes into inventory and asset management, illicit discharge and detection and elimination, phosphorus reduction projects needs to be planned for, public education and outreach, monitoring the construction projects. All of that comes under the stormwater MS4 permit that town need to be in compliance with. And as of right now, the MS4 permit is being, the new MS4 permit is in works. So there has been a draft where we provided our comments, and it's going to be more stringent moving forward. So there will be more requirement that we need to follow through to be in compliance with the MS4 requirement from the state.
Okay, great. So we talked a little bit about stormwater so far, but I'd like to hear from both of you about why residents should really care about this. We talked about some of the flooding, but what's at stake if we don't appropriately manage this properly?
Well, I think it's, again, I mentioned earlier, people in Concord do appreciate the natural environment. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of interest of preserving and protecting that. And these river systems are affected by the stormwater and the contributions from the developed area of town. So residents and businesses should care. I think with the climate action challenges, people are seeing and appreciating that we need to adapt what we're doing today to mitigate impacts of more extreme weather events. And especially in Concord, we've seen sort of the impacts of significant flood events. I was here in 2010, March of 2010, where there was a major flooding event in the March. And we could see, it had an adverse impact on sort of travel around town, on property damage. And we are in a low-lying area. Mm-hmm. If you look in Concord, you don't see many uplands or high areas. And because of that, I think there's sort of the need for the protection of public and private property, the functions of the community so you can have egress in and out of places, without flooding, erosion control, where you have unintended or unplanned catastrophic failures. We've had a couple major culvert impacts or damages based on flooding in the last 5 years, with costs of hundreds, if not millions of dollars for emergency response. So the idea of sort of identifying the assets meaning the stormwater, catch basins, the pipes in the ground, the culverts, how they're interconnected, understanding that, and then sort of proactively managing or maintaining that, cleaning it, making sure if they're blocked, they're unblocked with special equipment operations. If there's failures of that infrastructure, having funding so that you can replace or repair those things. Culverts across the country, engineers are now being challenged with what are the design basis of some of these major systems to accommodate very extreme rain events or snowmelt events. And so a lot of challenges. It's not unique, but I think Concord, why should Concord care? Concord has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to environmental resource management, water protection. And in this particular case, I will say Massachusetts is ahead of a lot of the country in developing these utilities. There are a couple dozen now in Massachusetts. They are occurring nationwide, but there's 351, something like that, communities. A couple dozen have already taken the steps, the progressive, proactive steps to identify the need for funding and management.
So you mentioned some of the projects like culvert repair and cleaning out infrastructure. Are there projects that have been you've been waiting to do and waiting for funding to be more proactive to manage this program?
Yes. So when we have done the assessment of the culverts throughout the town, and when we did the evaluation for the stormwater utility, what the town needs are, we looked into all of that, and we do have a study to identify which are the culverts that needs to be upgraded.
Okay.
And moving forward, but with the culverts, we'll be doing maintenance for the culverts. But if for the major upgrade for the culvert would not come from the stormwater utility yet, because it's like it's establishing, and we wouldn't have enough money. When we did the evaluation, the requirement of the stormwater management for the whole town came around $1.5 to $2 million, which would be required. But we understand that kind of money wouldn't be feasible, and so we had reduced. We did a lot of interpolation, looked into what's reasonable. So it has been updated to cover about $1 million of revenue from the stormwater utility. So we kind of went back in there and updated like what we can focus on and what would be
manageable, feasible.
Yeah, what would be feasible at the moment.
Yeah. So we're including in that drainage mapping, wet weather screening, testing, sampling. That's on the water quality side of things. Real issue in Concord is phosphorus and phosphorus reduction. People may know that we do routinely go out and try to provide education and promotion of how to manage and mitigate simple things like dog waste. For instance, if it's not managed, it ends up becoming sort of a problem in our rivers and streams, lawn fertilizers, things like that. Education goes a long way. That's part of our program. Just cleaning catch basins. The new permit has requirements for communities. So it's not just an option, but you have to clean a certain number of your catch basins on an annual basis. So that's labor and materials in order to do that. And then there's the disposal of the material that you remove. And so all these things are sort of the what should be considered routine costs. And moving forward, those are some of the things that we're looking at for the operation and maintenance that this fund will support. As Sammy mentioned, some of the larger projects, like a culvert replacement, a simple replacement may be $1 million. So those would be things that we'd likely have to identify, ideally do it proactively, plan for, go to town meeting, borrow, and then pay over time through the fund. So that would be sort of how we'd look at the more significant capital needs.
And you mentioned that the folks in Concord care a lot about the natural environment. And I think when people are listening to this, they might ask, what can they do to help? What can residents do to help to either reduce their runoff, improve water quality? How can they contribute to this? I think that dog waste was one example, but are there others that people can do on their own to help this area?
Yes, definitely. All of us would be working together towards the stormwater management. And for the residents, I would say going up for the pervious material, right, such as like permeable pavers when you do the upgrade to your property, installing rain gardens, dry wells within the property to manage the stormwater runoff. For example, the disconnect downspouts from driveways or streets to direct them towards your lawn would be a good approach of taking, which would help infiltrate naturally into the ground. Just regular maintenance also goes a long way. Like if you keep leaves, grasses and debris out of the stormwater, like catch basins, and which will prevent the clogging and long-term maintenance. And also with the stormwater utility, we are introducing stormwater credit, where if you are managing the stormwater runoff within your property, then you might qualify for certain credit system, which would be a plus thing. This action will not only help protect the local river, reduce flooding, but will also support the Concord's climate resilience goal, and also can lower your stormwater utility bill fee by some percentage.
That's the next question I was going to ask, is about the billing. So, who's receiving a bill? How often do they see it? And that's exciting to hear. There may be ways for people to contribute to have it reduced.
Regarding the billing, we're going with how you receive the bill for the other utilities, such as water and electric. The property owner would be receiving the stormwater utility bill. And since the stormwater utility would be applicable to all of the properties that have any kind of impervious area or development, I should say, no matter if it's a commercial, residential, or tax-exempt property, or town-owned properties, state-owned properties, everybody would be contributing, and they would be receiving the bill for the stormwater utility monthly.
Okay, so we're talking about your driveway, parking lot, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important, as Sammy mentioned, it's all property owners. Again, I think somewhere around 93% of the taxes in Concord are from residential properties. And when we look at the stormwater utility in the impervious cover, which is all properties, we look at it closer to almost a 50% contribution from residents. So the idea of fairness and equity here is that if we continue without this enterprise or just leaned into the taxes, that would be the source of funds to do all the work we're talking about. The work we're talking about is not optional. Mm-hmm. It has to be done. Where there is flexibility is how much impervious cover is on each individual parcel. Mm-hmm. As Sammy mentioned, for small residential properties, we're probably talking about a fee of somewhere about $100. What is it?
You're saying yearly?
Yeah, yearly fee.
Yeah.
And for large commercial complexes or areas with campuses and that sort of thing, we'd be looking at tens of thousands of dollars per year. But just like the small residential, if you can do your part, and I will emphasize doing your part is not just installing something but maintaining it. Mm-hmm. That's the real challenge with stormwater. It's not a one and done. You have to do something and maintain it, just like we maintain the stormwater system in the right of way. A commercial property may have a very elaborate stormwater system, and they are also eligible for a credit but they also have to demonstrate that they're maintaining that system. So, our interest is not to make it so burdensome for residents to, do the right thing, receive that credit. But I will volunteer. It's going to be pretty marginal. The costs and fees are not that significant. I mean, every dollar today matters. We understand that. But we know we're going to be spending the money. This is just a way of doing it where it's a little bit more equitable.
And so I know this podcast is just one stop on this educational campaign that's really been going on for a number of years with town meeting conversations and climate action work over the past few years. But when is this going to go into effect? When should people start to expect to see that in the mail?
Yeah, so this is an interesting element of being on the more innovative, cutting edge of developing the utilities. We're learning the implementation has its challenges. So to Concord's credit, the biggest hurdle for establishing a stormwater utility is the political will. And we've been very fortunate, and again, this is how Concord operates, through the climate action interests, through town meeting. We've actually had a very deliberate strategic education awareness program of what this is all about. We had 2 town meetings. The first town meeting was to establish an enterprise fund and establish a bylaw, which was very clear to identify, the purpose of, this utility, the various mechanics of how it would operate, who would set the fees. The Public Works Commission is the authority to establish set fees.
That was 24, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right, 2 years ago. And then once we had that framework, there was a commitment that we would then develop a budget. And we made that budget plan available to the community. We then went back to the Public Works Commission. Now they were authorized to set rates based on that budget. They did rates. They set rates before town meeting, the last town meeting in the spring. And then we went to town meeting with a plan that was now more complete. What we've learned is to get this stood up, this utility, there are and have been some challenges with just setting up the bill structure, looking at each parcel, doing a lot of work, We have a phenomenal GIS, Geographic Information System, management tool in Concord with a phenomenal team who can do all sorts of analysis. We've been working with that group to try and identify the amount of impervious cover on every parcel of land. It's very complex. It's taken a lot of effort. We are almost done with that, but it's taken months. And now we're working literally with our utility billing software company to put into place and set up a framework to send a monthly bill that's going to go, as Sammy mentioned, along with all the Concord utility bills, with a stormwater fee attached. And we even have an active website where people can go online and take a look to see what their property is, what the assessment of the fee will be as a reference. And I think we're in the final throes of getting that structure so we can actually send bills out. I will volunteer. It's taken us longer than we would have liked. So what we need to do is we're anticipating, we had hoped for December, but it looks more realistic that it's probably going to be January where the first first issuance of bills will occur. They'll occur on a monthly basis. And, I think we fully expect once we start sending those out, there's going to be more interest of what is this? Right. Where is it coming from? The challenge in Concord is there's a couple hundred people who are very active and very engaged, but many people don't understand something until it's literally happening. That's why this podcast is huge. This is an opportunity, if and when they do get a bill, they're going to go on the website. Sammy, you can talk a little bit about what you have on that.
So we have created the stormwater utility fee webpage where you can see the impervious area ranges and fee associated with the impervious area with the property type. We also have the GIS available in the same page. I was trying to make it as simple as possible and easier to follow through. So you have a interactive GIS property research tool there where you can click on it, search your property, and it will show which tier you fall under, what the total impervious area of your property is, and what would the monthly fee be for your property.
Great.
And we also have the abatement application in place and credit application in place, which you can find it in the same web page. And we're like encouraging residents to go look up through the web page and check the GIS to check your property. And if you have any questions, you can reach out as well. We have the email address in that web page as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you say you get a bill when this starts up in the new year, and you feel like it's maybe not right. Maybe you kind of change something on your property that wasn't captured, and you want to have a conversation about it. How should folks connect? Is it through the email on the webpage? Or?
Yeah, we have created the stormwater specific email. So
Okay.
It is stormwater@concordma.gov, where you can, if you have any questions regarding the credit process, abatement process, or just general question on how you can reduce your fee, or if you're looking to implement something like BMPs within your property, you can reach out and someone from our team would reach back out to you with more information. And we have been doing a lot of public outreach as well, where people have been going into the website and looking into the property, and they have reached out to us as well. So we're like going through all of that at the moment as well. And even though you wouldn't have like stormwater utility account as of right now because it hasn't been executed yet.
Right.
But if you have any questions regarding your property, if you want us to look at a certain aspect of your property, we have been we've been looking into it, and if there needs, we're like verifying the information that we have. If you believe there's, for example, we did like the total impervious area finalized in April of this year, but you believe you did some changes to your property. Either you add more impervious area or less impervious area, and it's not reflective, then you can reach out and we'll do the research, we'll meet, check the property and do the update needed.
Yeah, one thing, Megan, it's important for people to understand. One is, well, you may be able to save some money. There's still going to be costs.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're not talking about precision. When we talk about impervious cover, in fact, we wrestled with various models for rate setting. How granular do you get? Is it per square foot, or is it in sort of bins of square feet of impervious cover? So we think we found the right mix based on what we've seen out in the universe, but a modest change may not make any difference in your rate, right? So, if you're, between 0 and 2,500 square feet, whether you're 1,900 or 25, it's the same. There's also been an allowance with the GIS for some uncertainty, even though the GIS is phenomenal. There's still some uncertainty, maybe some masking from shading trees or something like that. So we're even built in some allowance, some flexibility, and generally, they say the tie will go to the runner, to the property owner. We'll try to not put them in the wrong, higher tier. So there is some allowance. So it's not about precision. It's more approximate, but with some accuracy involved. So
when I think about sustainability, we also often describe it as the sustainability triangle, and projects and programs and efforts really need to work for the planet, for the climate. They need to work for humans, and they also need to work for the economics. And so it seems like this effort is looking to, trying to secure the finances to do the work that's required. And we talked a little bit about how some work has been done in the past from the general fund. But with this is really a more sustainable financial model to be more proactive for planning. Do you expect to do more work through this utility, or just kind of better plan for and, continue the work with a steady stream of expected revenue to support it?
It's a great question, and I think the answer is both. We are ramping up the maintenance effort because we will have the resources to do it. And as we do that, the system will function better, so there'll be less secondary adverse impacts if it's functioning properly. But at the same time, we fully recognize that with climate and change, there's going to be improvements or upgrades that are going to happen. We're still in the early side of that, but at least we now have the framework and a system in place, including professionals like Sammy, who are involved to assess, evaluate, and see kind of what the needs are. And again, that's why I call it sort of the orphan utility, because we've never really put that attention into it. It's been out of sight, out of mind, unless you've had flooding in your backyard or, sort of a impact on your road, or even with flooding, deteriorating roads and that sort of thing. There's always secondary adverse impacts that have been sort of accepted in the past. And then also, really, the water quality component is the other angle of we really need to be, paying attention. And again, Concord's been doing it for a long time, but now we have a steady funding source to sort of continue that, and including the town putting in rain gardens in the public ways. And when we do our design of our roads program, and we look at, changing, the stormwater, kind of flow, how we're managing, mitigating, that's now can be baked in with a funding source, which we didn't have before.
We talked a little bit at the beginning about the grant that Concord got for the Suasco Climate Collaborative, which is a regional effort to mitigate, kind of flooding impacts. And for that MVP program, I was invited out to Western Mass to Williamsburg, and they had a ceremony with the lieutenant governor. And they were talking about a 9-hole golf course that is going to be rewilded and turned back to help mitigate flooding. I think there was a stream that had been kind of shifted for the development of that golf course in the past. And so they're going to bring it back, kind of put everything back and plant native plants. And it was really interesting to hear about some of the significant flooding in Western Mass in the past few years, and this is a direct kind of proactive plan that's been supported, by the state through this grant program to help mitigate flooding impacts, because it seems to be happening more and more. And some of the feedback from the conversation was it costs a lot less to get ahead of it, than to deal with the emergencies. And so I think just wanted to share that, and I think.
The ounce of prevention versus the pound of cure.
Right.
And for what it's worth, there are no plans. Concord Country Club, Nishotic, don't be concerned.
Rewilding those.
No plans on our horizon.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share about this utility? And I think you shared about the webpage where people can learn more. Anything else you want to?
I just wanted to mention that we also have done the bill inserts for this month. So with your bills, you will be seeing the stormwater information and the link to the web page where you can see all of that information. So I'll just say look out for the bill inserts, and if you have any questions, do reach out to us.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say, just credit to Sammy and the engineering team. A lot of effort. This is not an overnight success. This has been a long sort of development process, but we are getting to the point of implementation. And so, I think we're looking for some understanding, hoping things like this podcast can help people learn about the system and know we're doing what we can to protect their systems, and their communities. And again, with the water resources and the interest in protecting them, I think universally it's a good thing for Concord, and it's at the right time.
Great. Well, thank you both so much.